I'm sorry, Daniel, but they use your own political system against you
Yeah,
for disclosure. Like they're using it. Like to me, when you're saying all this stuff, I'm trying to keep it in order, but it's kind of like the Tasmanian devil. When he would spin and take all the debris with them, and you're trying to
yeah,
make sense of what. Like it's crazy that you're keeping this all in order of like all the sections. I would lose my mind. And you're right, it is 4D chess, but
yeah.
they use your own system against you to keep this quiet. That's insane.
Because they've been allowed to do it outside of the country.
Okay.
Because the Congress has acquiesced to the CIA and the Defense Department engaging in covert operations to overthrow democratic governments around the world, to assassinate political leaders around the world, to smuggle massive amounts of heroin around the world, to finance secretly their operations, etc. And the members of Congress know they're doing that. And they've acquiesced in it because they're afraid, because they know that they'll be retaliated against, because that covert operation that they've developed in the CIA and other places to unseat democratic governments around the world, they have turned those weapons against the citizens here
So
in our country.
yeah, but wouldn't Daniel, wouldn't that and you would know this more than anybody else, but wouldn't that constitute treason from the military complex against its own country? The way that they're doing this, like and maybe that's why disclosure can't come out, because it's treasonous. Not only what if they've kept from Congress, but what they've done to their own people.
Yeah.
We keep thinking about the CIA, what they've done to other countries, but what they've done to Americans, including the MK Ultra programs and all that, is above disgusting. And those crimes is, I think, what they're worried about, that as disclosure comes forward, all the dirty laundry comes out and they can't control it. They say, well, it wasn't us. We didn't do it back in the 60s. It's a fresh group. Yeah, but
Yeah.
what are you up to now?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what legalities, like what can the government do against a rogue or a rogue military complex?
Well, the problem is right now that it's only the government who can prosecute treason.
Right.
What we as citizens can prosecute is a federal criminal racketeering enterprise, which is what they are.
Mm.
There's a statute that Congress had passed to give citizens the right to bring an action in the federal court systems to charge them with committing specific lists of crimes, that they've embezzled hundreds of billions of dollars out of other appropriations that have been made by Congress to go and fund other aspects of our government. They've embezzled that money to finance this secret program that they're engaged in. They've committed perjury to the United States Congress. They've intimidated witnesses. They've kidnapped people and taken them into custody to intimidate them. That this is prosecutable. The problem is that if you try to get the instrumentalities of our government, our constitutional government, to do anything about that, they choke. And you look at what happened in Iran-Contra. I mean, we had these people dead to rights. We knew exactly what they were doing. That they were supplying weapons to the Contras down in El Salvador, in Nicaragua, in complete violation of a direct order of Congress prohibiting them from doing that. And not a single person was punished for that. Not a single person was prosecuted for that. The special prosecutor came in. We got the special prosecutor appointed, Judge Lawrence Walsh, and he indicted 13 of them. And President Bush Sr. pardoned all of them to keep them from revealing what was really going on.
Just like
We
flipping
did
the
the same thing
bird,
in
right?
Watergate.
Yeah.
We tracked them down in Watergate, and what happened? I mean, Nixon resigned, and and a handful of people went to prison, for obstructing justice, temporarily, but no structural changes were made. Okay, so that this national security state thing that we're dealing with is such a serious problem that we have here, that what we've got to do is we've got to mobilize the people in our country who are genuinely desirous of getting this information about the UFO stuff, and genuinely desirous of establishing some kind of a constructive, mutually beneficial relationship with the extraterrestrial civilization here. that we've got to bring all of this pressure to bear against this national security state. And we've got to try to stand up people in the House and Senate of our United States government who are courageous enough to go after these people. Okay. And the people that are in there right now are only moderately so. And so that they're doing moderate things to try to get at some of this information. But in the final analysis, they're always setting up structures that are completely dependent upon the national security state agreeing to release the information. Okay, and they won't demand subpoena power. They won't do this yet. And it's the House of Representatives that is the focus right now, because we've revealed so much information to the Senate Intelligence Committee and to their staff and to their members that they have come forward with a 64-page bill. And we've got to get that passed now by the House. That's why the House becomes the battleground right now, to try to get enough members of the House of Representatives that are going to vote for that full 64-page bill. And then the contest becomes who's going to be on that 9-person panel, that are going to be reviewing this, and how much information are they going to be willing to publicly release. We've got to have the American people rise up and demand that people be appointed to that board who are going to do their job, and not just succumb to the national security state. That's where the battleground is going to be. So as a trained attorney and a constitutional litigator for 50 years and co-founder of the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review, I've familiarized myself with what the structures of our government are that we can utilize to give them a full and fair opportunity to exercise their constitutional authority and exercise their constitutional obligation to do this. And if they won't, that we know how to take the steps to replace them. And we also know how to take direct citizen action by the CE5 activities of reaching out to establish diplomatic contact and communication directly with the extraterrestrial beings. So all of these things are within the constitutional framework of our government, but we as citizens have to get off the couch, stop spending so much time watching football games and watching movies on 16 different cable television channels, and do our job as citizens. Okay, and so the question is, do people care enough? Do people care enough about the reality that we're surrounded by an extraterrestrial civilization that has solutions to our global climate change problems, with alternative sources of energy? They have access to information that has provided, I think, by this time, definitive answers to some of the most profound philosophical and even theological questions that our human family has been struggling with for eons. And are we ready for this? Are we going to insist upon getting this information? And that's the only solution. Really, the rest of it is playing house. But we're exhausting all of our administrative remedies to give all of the constitutional instrumentalities of our government the opportunity to function the way they're required to do by our Constitution. And we're going to mobilize to get people into those offices, the House offices and Senate offices, that have the courage to do this by disconnecting them from major corporate contributions, because the corporations realize that this national security state is functioning for their benefit. Okay, and so that they're not going to support this. So that what we have to do is we have to get candidates that are willing to be supported by citizens' movements to get them into those offices, to insist upon asserting their constitutional power, in taking responsibility to perform their constitutional obligations, and go after this element deeply buried in the Defense Department, in the Central Intelligence Agency, root them out, get them criminally prosecuted under the Federal Criminal Racketeering Act for their acts of perjury, their acts of embezzlement, their acts of kidnapping and intimidation, and even murder of witnesses,
Plenty
to keep
of
them
them
silent.
Yeah.
This is what has to get done. That's what the New Paradigm Institute is here for, to do all of those things, and to try to establish alliances with all the other citizens organizations to raise up their commitments to the same intensity that we have, so that they're not drinking the Kool-Aid and think that all you have to do is get a law passed by Congress, and that somehow that's going to solve the problem, because that isn't going to solve the problem. You know,
What do
we've
you
got
think is in that? What do you think, or can you speculate on what you believe might be in those 30 pages that they don't want to release? What do you think
no.
might be?
What the 30 pages I'm talking about are the other pages of the 64-page Senate bill that is
Right,
all
what's in
public. That is the setting up of this board of review. This is giving subpoena power to the board to extract information. This has got criminal penalties in there for people who retaliate against whistleblowers. Those are the additional pages that we need to get past. But with regard to the deeper one of your 14 questions, basically was is like, what is it that we don't even know about yet?
Yeah.
Okay, but some of the things that we don't even know about yet is, for example, the fact that this element in the national security state has been using children, has been getting children out of these schools, mainly on military bases, military families, of getting the children, trying to train them into exercising psychic capabilities, right? So that they can be trained to help train pilots to fly these craft because they're run telepathically. And it's going to be revealed that they've known that they are frying the brains of some of these kids by subjecting them to stimulations, electronic stimulations to stimulate their psychic abilities, and that they've done things like this. Okay, now those are more heinous crimes that have not even been publicly discussed to a great deal right now. But the fact of the matter is that this national security state has to be rooted out, and we have to be able to get China and Russia to respond by starting to disassemble their national security states as well. Because the simple reality is that the United States is the one that started this. The United States is the one that supported the creation of the Third Reich in Germany. You know, the people from Brown Brothers Harriman, they financed the creation of the Third Reich in Germany to be a bulwark against Bolshevism that had arisen at the end of World War I by ousting the Tsar Nicholas II. And what this is it's a war that's been mounted on behalf of the capitalist economic system of corporate capitalism, in that they're making war on the rest of the planet in order to maintain their continued privileged access to the strategic raw materials. That's what's going on here. And so we've got to stand down that war machine here in our country, and we've got to be able to reach out to China and Russia to get them to respond by saying, look, they've created their entire national security state apparatus in competition with this of the United States, that we've got to get them all to stand down from this weird combat that they're engaged in over the economic system on our planet. Okay, this is what we've got to do, and we've got to do this as citizens here in the United States, because we have at least access to our democratic principles here still, which they don't have in Russia and they don't have in China.
Right.
So we're the ones that have to do this if we're going to get this done.